So our next speaker is Deviant Ollam, noted security auditor, penetration tester, and physical security expert. He is a consultant with the core group and a member of the board of directors of the Open Organization of Lockpickers. You can find him at various security conferences throughout the year, running the Lockpick Village, a place for visitors to participate on hands-on physical security training. Please welcome to the stage, Deviant Ollam.
Right, thank you very much. So indeed, calling this little session Putting Out Physical Security Fires, because it has to do with the locks and the physical security controls that you use day in and day out and you rely on, and how they get undermined by some things even as simple as just local fire codes. Because if you're bearing down on an enemy you want to fight, you can bring a lot of personnel, a lot of materiel, but you can't fight City Hall. No matter how many belt-fed barrels you bring down on a bureaucrat, it's not going to go your way usually. So there's a lot of interesting conditions that can undermine the locks that we rely on, and they're because of just local things like fire code. Before we get into that, though, you all understand, right, that physical security is data security. You can configure your network correctly, and if my firm is contracted for a pen test, I have plenty of people who are, Metasploit experts, and they'll bring in all kind of payloads. But my job, I gave up keyboards kind of a while ago. I'm going to find where your network rack is and throw console cables into everything because I'm touching the gear. If you have, we have these amazing secure comms in our building, like we have all this, B2B systems and tokens, and our phones have this cool link up. You probably have a lot of copper trunking down into a closet in the basement. Again, I'm just going to physically get in that room and just jack in some clips and use a lineman's butt pack and listen to calls. So all the decisions and all the training and all the background that you put into building a good infrastructure can get undermined by the choices that someone makes at Home Depot when the walls went up. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the kind of locks we use every day, because how many of you have ever seen us maybe at a conference teaching lockpicking, or I've come up to West Point a number of times to lecture, maybe when some of you all were cadets a while back, I don't know. But if you've never seen lockpicking done, really quickly, I want you to go home with some practical knowledge you can try, hopefully not break your own door. Most of the locks we use every day, padlocks, door locks, deadbolts, these are all examples of the same design. These are all examples of the pin tumbler lock, the standard mechanism that we've been using in this country for over a century, where you have pins on top of pins in what's called a pin stack. And those pins, when the lock is at rest, prevent the lock from turning. The plug, it's called, cannot turn. Of course, the correct key gets inserted, the key blade pushes the pins to just the right height, nothing is binding, that can turn. Mechanically, does this make sense? You understand fundamentally what's happening in all of your doors, because it's not much more than this. And we teach this every day in lockpicking sessions. We teach the idea that normally the blade of a key is just pushing a bunch of little pins up. Normally it's push the pins, turn the plug. Lockpicking is just an inversion of that. Lockpicking is turn first and then try to push. And the idea is exploiting some little mechanical imperfections, some small tolerance issues of construction in a lock. You can get pins to stick and hold in the right position. Imagine it's like playing a roulette wheel, like playing a slot machine, but if you could hold certain wheels where you want them on the bar. That's what lockpicking is about. It's about stressing the system. It's like any kind of hacking, really, right? You stress the system and make it behave in an incorrect way that benefits you. So the idea of putting a little turning pressure in with the tool you see at the bottom of this lock, and then hunting around, trying to feel those pins. And if you guys want to try this, talk to me later. We'll try to break out some picks and tools if I have any in my backpack. Or I'll just come back. I'll do a much longer hands-on some other time. We do this. We love teaching people about this, because you can see a slide like this and kind of understand what's happening here. But until you've done it yourself, you get the real jaw drop, and we like that a lot. So here this person is, they're just catching these pins at the shear line, just getting those pins to the right height that the key would have anyway. And if you try this yourself, you will learn it really is fundamentally this easy. And before you know it, boop, lock pops open. So there's ways to mitigate that, of course. People have known this for a while. And if you've never picked a lock and you think that looks simple, you might even realize, well, mechanically it's got to be simple to stop this. If turn first, then push is sort of the attack vector, well, let's make that harder to do. Let's change the shape of some of the pins. And locksmiths have been doing this for years with pick-resistant pins. The idea that lifting it straight up would be fine, but this is called a spool pin. It's harder to get around. If you try to turn first, it'll jam up on an edge. You can get really seriously nuts about it. This is a Swedish brand that does a little counter milling in the plug. And why do you think not everyone does that, though? It's expensive, right? It comes down to budgets and acquisitions and allocation, right? So not every lock incorporates really interesting features. But you say, no, come on, we are the government. We have really nice features. We can do amazing things. We can afford good locks. So you might have something like a dimple lock. I've seen these keys once when I had this key and it was all drilled on the flat side of the key. I'd never seen anything like it. They're just conventional pin tumblers. You might need some different tools. It might be harder to reach in that keyway, but it's still absolutely possible to do. It just throws something different. Oh, well, this is really something different now. Oh my gosh, look, the pins, they're around in a radial circle. Anybody seen what these were the thing to have on your alarm panels or your soda machines about 20 years ago. They're not so much anymore because, again, they're just conventional pins that have to push to a shear line all uniformly. Normally a key would be doing that, but there's tools that exist just to pick that kind of a lock. It's called a tubular pick. You can play with them if you want at one of our sessions. It just duplicates all the different cuts on the pin. And, a funny story about that. We were on a job once. Very nice door. Here's our laser beam. No, I don't have a laser beam. Oh, well. You can see this is a very nice door. It was secured with a very high-quality lock, a kind you'll see in a minute. But if you look way at the top of that door, what's going on up here? All right, well, that was the lockbox that had the key to this door, and it was protected with a much worse tubular lock. Here's another system we have. If we love getting into elevator equipment at our company, I'll show you some pictures about that in a minute. But again, big elevator machine room, high security lock on the door. What's this way up here? Oh my. Oh my, that's a key box, which let us in to the pump room, which let us in to the elevator controller circuitry, which let us do a lot of things in that building that they didn't expect us to be able to do. And why was the key there? Well, it was there for the elevator inspector to come around every so often and get in that room and do his or her monthly inspection or bi-monthly inspection or maybe not so frequent inspection in some elevators I've seen. But I said earlier, that was a high security lock. Well, what is like a high security lock? Well, you have something like Medico. If you work in the government sector, you've seen Medico Locks, right? Medico Locks is the gold standard for a lot of people in the high-tech world and the high-security world. This is the final round of a locksmithing and lock-picking competition being held in Holland. These are gentlemen picking Medico Locks. And that started right when that video clip started.
On 23 seconds.
Now, can everyone do that? No. That's Oliver Dietrichson. He's one of the best pickers in Germany. But there are people out there who can. There are specialized tools that exist to try to attack these high security locks that are out there. And if you want to know more, ask me about that later. Ask me about certain brands or hold up your keys if you're really daring, and I'll tell you if there's an exploit for them. But I said this talk is about things much more mundane maybe, like fire code, right? When we are on a job, I am a decent enough lockpicker, right? I'm not the best guy in the world. I might not even be the best guy in the company. I think Bobek's probably a little better than me. But I'm not picking most locks when I'm trying to get into a penetration target. I'm not even touching the lock a lot of the time. Like here's a friend of ours from Holland, Barry Wells, and you see he's crouched down at the bottom of a door. He's not anywhere near the lock, but he's going to get in. Well, what's happening here? Let's watch this. He says, okay, I got to get to this door, so he crouches down. He's fishing like something under the door, literally. You hear some clunking. He leans on the door with his head. What the heck was that? Let's look at that from the other side. Inside, we have the working end of this tool, called a Keydex under door tool. We make our own, but Keydex is the most popular. All it does is reach for that handle. It's a string delivery mechanism. It drops a cord line right onto that handle because for fire code, how many of you know exiting a building, egress, usually doesn't involve credentials. It doesn't involve fumbling around with your keys. In most jurisdictions, you have to be able to egress a building very quickly, and that often means just pulling the handle, even if the door is locked. Here's a good example of that. This wasn't exactly a pen test job. This was an office party where someone had gone home early, and you could see his office had the beer. So I wanted to do this, but I was at an office party. I travel with some picks in my pocket. I don't travel with the whole penetration suite. But I was kind of MacGyvering it up. I was like, all right, give me that Cat 5 cable, and I need this tape, and there's got to be a closet around here somewhere. So I stretched out the coat hanger, made a little line like that with the Kevlar. No, I didn't have my Kevlar line. I just stretched this out to make a pull line, a pull chain. Was able to affix that to the end of the coat hanger with the tape. It's not exactly what you'd get out of a locksmithing catalog, but with my buddy eagerly, like, are you going to get this working, Dave? I hope. I really need something. It looks like you're on the handle. I can't believe that worked. So this isn't even with like professional gear. This is just found materials around the office. And you can do things like this. Oh yeah, you got the Yinzer, man. I'm up from Philly. So if you want to get even more into the ones and zeros flowing across the wires, a more advanced version of this is attacks against the BACnet, the Building Automation Control. Brad Bowers, who I think he used to work for the Federal Reserve up in Philly. He may have moved on now, but he did a great talk about this. My company and another company out west are looking into it more. Building automation is how systems in a large environment send alerts to other parts of the building. Like, oh my God, this wing is on fire. Please set off this light, set off this blinker, turn off the door locks for egress purposes. You can fake BACnet, because it's all connectionless UDP traffic. You can fake BACnet messages in a building's network. You can even send them why would you send them to the main the main head end, saying, oh my God, there's a fire, because a lot of things are going to happen. Don't fake that message. Fake the message to the door lock that says, I am the head end. There's a fire, wink, wink, unlock. Doors will just pop open in some environments. Again, back to the mechanical side. How many of you know what a Knox box is? There's some hands. By code, fire departments, many jurisdictions need to get into buildings, and they require that the key for that building be placed in a small box outside on the front, fascia of the building. And yes, these are protected with high security locks, many of which are Medico. They're nice. The idea of the key that operates that Knox box, which you realize it doesn't operate your Knox box. It operates every Knox box in the region. That key is usually protected in the cab of fire trucks with a unit that should not let the key be removed. Unless there's, some of them use DTMF tones over the radio, some of them use PIN codes, some of them use a combination. So they keep those keys pretty well. You don't want to have this kind of key just floating around. Like if this key gets compromised, that would be really, oh, whoa, shoot, that shouldn't have happened. It's kind of embarrassing. Knox is actually headquartered in Phoenix, my guy just told me. Maybe that's how it happened. Maybe just someone walked into the factory and got the keys. I don't know. Can I talk about elevators for a second? I'm throwing a lot at you. You're giving me smiles. I'm hoping it's good stuff because I've never distilled my slides down like this. I think I had about 137 slides and maybe 12 words. I like to keep a real low word-to-slide ratio in my presentations. So some more pictures and a little bit of video clipping for you. Elevator systems are used many times as if they are part of your security model. They are not part of your security model. The idea of cutouts, as they're called, cutout switches or floor lockouts or badge systems that require, how many people have ever been in an elevator? You need a credential for some reason to travel to certain floors. Sometimes you can tell what the interesting floor is in an elevator. But if you've ever noticed, they're not just buttons in elevators. There are a lot of interesting little panels and other locks on that fixture, on that cab operating panel. You will find additional controls if you know where to look in an elevator. They allow alternate modes of operation of that elevator. Tripping an elevator into, let's say, independent service mode, which I do all the time on pen tests, usually will wipe out most of the floor security lockouts. Not only that, but it makes the elevator not respond to hall calls. It won't service user demand. So I've gotten into a building during the day, just kind of bluffed my way in, went in an elevator, switched independent. I wheeled like a chair in there. I was like, oh, this is broken. I'm servicing it. And I just sat in the elevator for 4 hours waiting for everyone to go home because the elevator wouldn't go to any other floors. It just wouldn't answer the calls. The rest of the elevator bank was doing its job. And then I just went to the colo facility on the 5th floor at the end of the day and walked in, and there I was. But there's even more interesting overrides you can do. And again, because of code, many elevators support a lot of these features. Every elevator supports a very specific feature, even if it doesn't have a hidden panel with extra switches for inspection mode and who knows what. Every elevator that you should see in America supports fire service mode. And what could be more important than an elevator that needs to be not operable by civilians in a fire, but maybe operable by first responders in a fire? Having keys, which by the way are manufacturer-specific default keys, having the keys to a certain brand of elevator should allow you to trip that elevator into fire service operation, at which point, I mean, sometimes you just find the keys on the job, at which point that elevator responds to you and only you. If you can trigger an automatic use, or a manual use of the fire response, the automatic fire response, if you can trip an elevator into fire service mode using the keys, that is absolutely your elevator now. That is your elevator if you know which keys to use, because you can see, even in the industry, people don't track which keys are which. They go, oh man, I need this key for this, I need this key for this. Elevator folk don't usually keep tabs on it. They just go to the building manager and I need the key, I'm doing the thing today with your parts, oil, and grease. Our elevator guy, who is a consultant with us, he has been tracking these keys and learning all about these keys for a very long time. And he's mapped which key goes to which system. He can even quote you the regulation that says, there shall be one master. This was a big push a while ago. There shall be one fire key and one fire key only. And it shall be the FEOK1, and only elevator and emergency personnel should have it. So of course you know this is a government operation when they printed the direct bidding code of that key in the regulation, because that's exactly what you want floating around out there. But what happens if you actually have these keys? What happens if, let's say, you develop a collection of keys like we do? And these are Howard's elevator keys. I think it's actually grown since that photo was taken. This was a job where we wanted to get in and use fire service mode. And I think there's a video in a second. You see us exploiting an elevator to get into a building where we shouldn't have been able to. We had our collection of keys. We knew exactly how the target was using their facility. And it was like this. They had a front desk with a security guard. The building, however, did have an elevator that would take people down to a parking deck out back. Now that elevator, you weren't supposed to be able to get to it from the parking deck very easily. You'll see it wasn't that hard. But then you weren't able to drive that elevator up because without credentials, the elevator would only go down. It would take people out of the building and that was all. It would sit there. We were able to take command of that elevator, drive it up, pop out at the next floor, and then because of the security culture of this environment, anyone who saw us presumed we belonged in the building because, oh, you must have come by that front desk. You must have been credentialed in. You must have gone through all the process. Let's look at a quick video of how that actually worked. So the client didn't even, I wonder if this is going to play, the client didn't believe exactly how this happened. They wound up pulling the footage of what we did. And here's a clip of us on the left and the footage on the right from the security camera. So that back door is locked. You know, like not well, but. And this elevator, we could call the door, we could, but it wouldn't go anywhere unless we turned on fire mode. See how long it takes.
Ready.
On.
Phase 1, phase 2.
Now that fire jewel is still lit, even though I've removed my key from the lobby level. And we can drive this up to the next floor. No badge, no authentication, just waltz right out. Yeah, and that was it. And the client, well, again, they were so shocked, we showed them this, and they said, that's impossible. You know, we were told by our contractor, that elevator doesn't go up. And I was like, let's say that again, a little slower. You think about what you're saying. I don't think you understand what an elevator is, brother. But many jurisdictions have this situation. These key boxes required that are super restricted, right? Like, oh, you can't have the elevator keys. You can only order these boxes and mount them on the wall, and then the fire chief comes and puts the keys in. You can order the boxes. So what did we do? Without the key, you don't get the key, right? You can disassemble the lock. And if you know a little something about high security locks, this is us just taking this thing apart, pulling the pins out of it very carefully. There's Bobak disassembling this, decapping it. This is a Medico lock. This is a high-end, high security Medico cam lock. We're using our Medico tray, dropping everything out carefully and observing where the pinning marks are, looking at a pinning chart. then reassembling it, recapping it, re-putting it together, and returning it to Vader, saying we don't need that anymore. But we've actually now, there are statewide keys. We have the Medico key for Kentucky. We have the keys for various zones in Florida. Orlando is Zone 6. I'll be down there in a little bit at InfoSec World. Miami-Dade is Zone 7. We have the keys for Louisiana. We have the keys for Virginia. And on and on and on. You can also do very scary things in elevators if you act like an inspector. If you get into the hoistway, oh boy, there's a video clip that I might show you later. I'm really short on time, but I hope you're still enjoying it. If you want, you can ask me later on. I'll show you some clips of us literally just riding an elevator car top to another floor. Because inside of that hoistway, do you think there's any locks or restrictors on those hoistway doors? No. Once you're in the hoistway, you own the universe for moving around that building. And we tell people there's a difference between your parts, oil, and grease tech and an actual elevator security consultant. If you have questions about your elevator system and whether it can be leveraged in an improper way, ask the right kind of people. So I'm a couple seconds over and we're almost done here. I wanted you to watch this sort of stuff today because I want you to consider unconventional attacks. I want you to think of the most mundane brick and mortar and steel stuff that you interact with all the time and how maybe it's not as secure as you thought if somebody leverages it in a weird way. My friends in Holland, when they lock their bikes up, they always shake the pole. And I was like, all right, you guys have a lot of more drugs here. I guess, well, what are you shaking these bike poles for? And they said, oh, you haven't heard about this? Yeah. So what a thief will do is compromise the pole, wait for someone to lock their bike up, pull the pole out of the ground, put it back, steal that bike, and then wait for the next one to come along in a couple days. And I was shocked, but I was like, that's actually kind of smart. So I started looking at, signage and poles where I was walking around. I mean, here we have a pole where there's 3 galvanized screws in the ground, but a rusted, weird, replaced screw. And it's hard to see in this lighting, but there's a hole in that pole. Sure enough, walk around Chicago, you could pull a lot of these poles out of the ground. Now, maybe that's shoddy work. It's city workers in Chicago. I don't know. Come on. But it's really wild stuff. And there's videos of people stealing bikes like this on the internet. So here's a nice public bike lock, bike rack. But sure enough, somebody has compromised the threads. They've basically knocked the little welding off. And they can unscrew and just pull the bike stand apart. And this is in Belgium. The idea that I've just locked my bike to this solid metal bar goes out the window. What I showed you about the handles inside of a door. The idea, well, of course, I just lock this door, and you do that thing where you check the handle on the outside and you leave. Is somebody going to come along in an unconventional way and pop that lock open with some means that you hadn't ever considered? We always conclude in the civilian world by making a bit of a military analogy. You guys already probably know this one from all your training. Security comes in a series of Ds. Security is not just there to deter an attacker or allow you to detect an attacker or hopefully delay an attacker. It's also there to hopefully divert that attacker to another avenue so that they take longer, they have to expend more resources. It should allow you to defend against an attacker, meaning you know what's happening. You have the right intelligence to actually respond to this threat. And last of all, the D that everyone forgets, especially in the corporate side, document, document, document. And that's not just from a CYA perspective, right? I mean, this is a town where this is a growth industry. How many times have you called up someone who's an associate of yours, right? Like you just saw them 2 weeks ago, and you're like, hey, I really got to check on the numbers and that thing. And you get some, yeah, I'm sorry, sir, she's not assigned to this desk anymore. Because someone else is moving on to that opportunity and another opportunity. And if you haven't left documentation behind for people who are coming up behind you as we're all growing in this field, we're all doing extra work, we're all doing relearning. So please pass this knowledge on and pass your knowledge on to the people behind you and behind them. And we're going to keep this ball moving down the field and all wind up better for it. So thank you for the extra couple of minutes, and I can take your questions. Thank you very much. Right on. All right. We do have a couple seconds then? All right. You guys are very gracious on that extra 4 minutes there. My dad was Army. I was raised 5 minutes early is on time, and on time is late, so yeah. How you doing, man? No questions at all. They just want the next speaker, I guess.
Mr. Ollam, quick
Sure.
question. What about the card lock systems? Have you explored how you can crack those as well?
Sure. So you refer to card locks. I presume you mean like access control card systems. Yeah. So that's a whole separate division in core. In fact, the fellow with the little scruffy beard and the glasses, Bobak, he is our electronics expert. HID is like the big name in the marketplace. We've broken pretty much all their technology. The latest version from HID is the I-Class series of products. Those are all blown. I-Class SE, I-Class SE Elite, he can now clone. Then we had a vendor at a job. They said, no, you told us about that. I gave them a preliminary report. They were going to install stuff. And I said, yeah, you should really consider a different set of readers. And they said, no, this is like the UC UX. And Bobak's like, I haven't heard of that one. And the vendor was all happy. And then Bobak took it home and broke it all open. So yeah, you can extract keys out of those card systems. It's a different type of attack, but it's still, security is a layered system, right? You never put the one machine gun nest and say, well, this is the greatest new ordinance we're ever going to have. We're good. No, you cover that by someone else, and you cover that by someone else.
So thanks, great talk.
Sure, thank you very much.
I'm not a lawyer, but as a general rule of thumb, if someone is interested in doing this, it's generally considered legal if you own the lock.
Yes.
So if you want to do this, it's really just a mechanical puzzle that you are purchasing, and then you can explore if you're interested.
Yeah, lockpick tools are legal in virtually all states. If you have more questions about your state specifically, ask me about it during the break. I'm going to stick around, and we're a font of knowledge. And like yourself, I am not a lawyer. I'm not dating one, but I'm usually pretty good on keeping you out of jail. So that's a good point to raise, because people want to go home and try it, but then they're afraid to. They're like, that would be dangerous. I lose my clearance if I get arrested.
So where's a good starting point, like Tool website or something?
Yeah, so I'm on the board of this nonprofit, Tool. That's Tool with T with 3 O's, Tool, the open organization of lockpickers, tool.us. All of our lessons and all of our lectures, they're all up there. All those slides with those animations that I made, there's much longer presentations like that up there. My site is deviating.net, or the core group site. We have a lot of the more high-end stuff on the core group site. So absolutely, you can always learn more. Just put lockpicking into Google. Anyone else?
I just want to ask you about your first name. How did that come about?
It's rather Robert Frostish in a way. It's sort of the two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with to deviate, to think outside of the box, or to be unconventional. It is not the name my mother gave me. She wishes that my first book was published under my given name. But once you're known as something, especially in the tech and cyber world, it sort of sticks with you. And I'm a basic regular guy. No one's going to know Matt or Steve or Brian in a room, but they might, Deviant's here? I heard of that guy before. I remember that guy. So no, that's not my given name, but my lady and I, our little kids are actually named Violet and Thunder. So. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Thank you very much. Is it on? There you go. Deviant, thank you very much for an entertaining and enlightening presentation. Here, as a small token of our appreciation, we present to you the Cyber Talks Black Badge.
Thank you so much.